Hello, my name is Anuban Kate. I'm a Paris-based engineer, and since a few months now, almost a year or more than that, I have been taking interviews with of authors because I like reading books. And today I'm very happy because this is one of the rare times where I get to talk to interview a friend who has also written a book, and her name is Renuka VISHWANATHAN. Welcome, Renuka.
Thank you,
Uh,
Manmohan.
you're welcome. And Renuka is a friend, but I would also say that she's a comrade, the way the word that she also likes to be used. Because when I was in Bangalore, we worked in the initial days of Aam Aadmi Party together, and we were involved in several activities there. We will visit those a bit later, perhaps. Uh, but the book that Renuka has written, the name of the book is Bless This Mess. And I plan to share this interview on 26 January 2026. And I couldn't think any other book being as apt for that event. So I will start now today's session. Um so before I start, I would like to introduce Renuka formally. So, Renuka, her early childhood is in Madras, Chennai, so which was called the Madras Presidency, and later she moved to Travancore Presidency, Cochin and Ernakulam in Kerala. Her father was a High Court judge and later also the Chief Justice of Kerala. Her mother was a doctor. That's her family background in a way. When it comes to her education, she has done BA in Economics and History in the Kerala University, later MA in English in Annamalai University. She did a second MA, Master of Arts in Economics. It was a correspondence course. She did later in France, MPhil in France, and it's DOSS, I think it d'études supérieures spécialisées. And she did that in public administration. It was a 1 year course. And later, she did also a PhD in 1984 in Paris 9. It was a doctorat d'état, and it was about comparative study about fiscal federations in the world. So that's about her French connection as well. And professional responsibilities has been 37 years or 37 years of career. She entered as a civil service. She worked as a bureaucrat for 37 years, as I said. She moved and rose up the ranks from a junior functionary to department head, then to state and central secretary. She was rural development secretary under the UPA government of Manmohan Singh. She also had a role in proposing laws and policies for approval by the cabinet and for the vote of the legislature in the state and central parliament. She was also part of discussions on cabinet notes before they were approved. And she has traveled across the world for professional and personal reasons. She was also an Aam Aadmi Party candidate in 2018 in Karnataka Assembly elections from Shanti Nagar. Now, the cities and countries that she has stayed or visited. So I told about Madras to Travancore, then to Mysore, where she got married. Then she moved to Bangalore, then to Paris, then to Delhi and Bangalore. And she scuttled between Delhi and Bangalore for quite some time. She is a polyglot. Renuka speaks multiple languages and she enjoys languages. So Malayalam is her mother tongue. She also speaks Tamil, Hindi, English, French. For 4 years, she learned it at Alliance Française de Bangalore. She also loves Spanish, and which she learned during several years at Delhi Institute of Foreign Languages and later in Bangalore University. Above all, what is important is that she has multiple interests and passions. So she's a film buff. She loves theater, music, literature, arts. She's also involved in environmental issues, women issues. She loves traveling, reading. So it's an inspiring personality for all of us. She has been an activist for voter registration in enrollment in schools of children of economically weak sections under RTE, Right to Education. Um, yeah, so I think this is an extensive introduction, but deservingly, which is hers. And I also did this because she hopes to write a next book, and perhaps that time I will invite my audience to listen to this introduction. Yeah. So thank you for listening to this introduction, Renuka. I have read your book and I really appreciated it because it brings not only your comments, your observations, but observations which come from your work and your on the ground in field activities. And added to that, this is an intellectual input in a way also. So it's a great mix. Your book had chapters that involve politics. There are general comments on democracy. We have voter lists, related issues. You have dealt with judiciary aspects, accountability of politicians, place of women in politics, and in democracy. Then about bureaucrats, caste issues, and a lot more. We might not have time to deal with all of them, but let's see how much we can cover. Idea is really that this interview serves a purpose to inspire, invite more audience to read it. Yeah. So I will start my first question by asking you what made you write this book? What was the inspiration? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Anubhav. Actually, I just wanted to add a small thing that I also speak Kannada because that's where I stood for elections, so it's important.
Indeed.
Uh, it's a beautiful language, and that's part of my my interest. I think I started to think about writing this book when I remembered that as we look back on your life, you remember what was your main interest in life, and I realized that I'd always been fascinated by politics. And so I tried to put together the what I had learned academically about political science and the experience that I had seen when I was working as an activist and on the ground. That was where the book started.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, there are some highlights that I would like to point out from the book, which really came to me as being important. And then I will ask my next question to you. So first is you have touched varied and diverse issues. So it's not just one issue-based writing, reflection. As I said, you have also included your personal experiences as a bureaucrat, as a concerned citizen, as an activist, as a politician, and we see a lot of ground level inputs which are precious. You have also importantly compared the Indian democracy with other democracies in the world, and it's also very vital not to lose focus in details in just one country and one democracy, but have the broader view. So that's important. I'm from Maharashtra, and unfortunately, the people from North India do not have much in-depth knowledge about the politics of the South because that's for them is something very intricate and different and complicated. The language being one reason as a barrier. So this book really has made me realize because I spent 7 years in Bangalore and I didn't know many of things. And thanks to your book, I realized those. So South Indian politics, in a simple way, put together is a highlight for me. I see also that you have both admired and criticized the Aam Aadmi Party in the book, and that in a way is a proof of your objectivity or an attempt of being an objective view about it. So that's really important, and you're not really partisan in the classical sense, let's say. Yeah. And last thing, you are convinced that politics is the only path to change, and that's what you mentioned in your conclusion. you know. So I really admire that. What I also liked was the beautiful comparison that you made in the book between Tamil Nadu and Kerala and the childhood memories you had. And I wish to highlight again those, and then I will request you to comment on it. So you say in Tamil Nadu, for example, the regional, cultural, and linguistic loyalties are just as important as the caste factor. And because the major task of unseating Brahmin dominance has already been accomplished in Tamil Nadu. And uh, about Kerala, you say that the Syrian Christian group is dominant there, especially in the Congress. But there are also Nayars and the smattering of Brahmins, which have been dominating the state politics in a way. About Tamil Nadu, you see that there was clearly a secessionist trend or movement, um, on especially in the late 50s, the Dravidistan demand that we know. But that was completely absent in Kerala, in the neighboring Kerala state, although they are also as irreverent uh, towards politicians in a way, but it was never separatist. Yes, and then you say that in general, there is a belief that the people of Kerala view fellow citizens irrespective of gender, region, religion, caste, or means as equal citizens, more than those of other Indian states. Yeah, so there's a sense of equality which is quite prominent there. You highlighted a major aspect, and I remember in those days we talked about that, but now we do not. That the isolation of Tamil Nadu ended in 1995 when DMK participated in the Devagowda government, and until then it was just outside support and no active participation at the central politics. Yeah. Um, and very last point, and then I stop, is that the Kerala has, of course, this leftist dominance in the political scene, and the labor unions were quite organized and militant, and that was one of the reasons, or perhaps why industries were reluctant to go to Kerala, and they preferred other states where those were weak. And then as a result, Kerala started exporting qualified engineers, doctors, nurses, mechanics to foreign country. Yeah. So this is what I really took and I liked from the book. I now request you to tell us about your childhood memories of those times and the transition from Tamil Nadu to Kerala that you had.
Anubhav, actually, I would like to see the similarities between Kerala and Tamil Nadu and the differences. And the similarities from today's point of view, political similarity, the major one is that both these states have completely been free of the Bhakt virus, the right-wing virus. They're both completely free. And that is the bastion at which today the RSS and BJP this is the door that they are hammering at. They want to get in somehow to both these states. And that's an interesting sidelight because their resistance to the right wing is due to completely different causes. In the case of Kerala, it's because it's a leftist ideology. Kerala was perhaps the first state in the world almost to have elected openly a communist government to power, and that happened immediately after independence. But in Tamil Nadu, there's absolutely nothing leftist in the ideology of the two parties. They both are regional parties. And what inspires them to fight the rest of the country actually is basically a tremendous sense of Tamil nationalism, Tamil culture, and even a desire at one point, as I've written, to form a separate Tamil state. So that's one of the things which is very important about both these states, that they fought the right wing, but they fought it for different reasons. The other very important thing that I noticed was that Tamil Nadu was secessionist. It started with the secessionist philosophy, and it is even now to some extent enshrined in the fondness in Tamil Nadu for federalism. I think Tamil Nadu is probably the one state in India which has pushed the federal boundaries of the constitution to the maximum extent. And that's why education, they have their own policy and they will hold on to it. and they will try to show how much you can formulate your own educational policy. And as you are very well aware from France, education is the key to the minds of people when it comes to something like political change or democracy. It's absolutely the key. So that is why they fight that fight for education for all of us. But when I went to Kerala, I found that nobody even understood the concept of secession. They never ever thought of forming. I mean, there was, the truth is that Travancore Cochin did try to become an independent state at the time of independence. But right now, there's no one ever in Kerala who will think, okay, we can leave this India. Nobody wants to, they never even think of themselves as separate from India, because everything that they need, they get from the rest of India, their food, all the other support. And they also go everywhere and work. And it's happening in Tamil Nadu, but the emotional part of it, which is built into the structure, that kind of feeling is just totally absent in Kerala. And it has always had two national parties. One is, of course, the left front, and the other is a middle of the road Congress front. And so that is a major difference between the two states, which I've noticed.
Yeah, thank you. And regarding this secessionist tendency that we had in Tamil Nadu, so I last year I happened to, or this year, I happened to talk to the Swedish political scientist Sten Widmal in his book Comparative Study about Kashmir and other Indian states. And he said the approach of the Indian state to deal with the secessionist tendency in Kashmir and in Tamil Nadu was quite in contrast. For example, Congress, when it saw that DMK and other regional parties were demanding for a separate state and they were being dominant, so Congress receded and took the back state and allowed democracy to flourish. While it had exactly the opposite approach, where it tried to meddle with the politics and did not really allow democracy to flourish, and which potentially could have also seized the demand for a separatist state. Yeah.
I completely agree with what he has said. In fact, separately, I'd actually written a piece on this when the Kashmir troubles were escalating, and I've seen throughout my years at Delhi how Kashmir was never allowed to perform democratically by any government. Of course, there's one slight difference between Tamil Nadu and Kashmir, and it's a slight difference really, that it was a border state in the north, and the border state meaning Pakistan was just adjoining Kashmir. So there was a land border with Pakistan. So it did make it a little more, I would say, fragile. But then Tamil Nadu was also very much on the border. There was Sri Lanka just across the border, and that's just as this a small little strait between India and Sri Lanka at that point. But it was very much a border state. So I think my own feeling is that a greater degree of federalism could have completely cured the Kashmiri psyche of any intention or desire to be secessionist. And well, there may be, of course, this may be a very simplistic explanation, but I still think that greater democracy,
Yeah.
greater is always a solution to secessions.
Now, what I suggest, I would share my screen because I have taken few aspects from your book and made a small presentation. So you will recognize this. I think it's important to start with a broader framework, and what you have compared and written in the book. It's about the pillars of democracy. And on top, we have the people, the voters. We have two major systems of which is called Westminster, which we have in India and UK, and the other one is presidential, which is in, let's say, in USA and in France. Uh, the four pillars that you have, the first is legislature, then you have executive, judiciary, and media. Although you have not dedicated a special chapter to media, you have treated aspects about it. So, legislature is always elected by people. It has lower house and an upper house. Upper house is an indirect selection of the representatives there. In executive, it can be elected or it cannot be elected. So we have a prime minister in the Westminster system who is really the active or the head of the government. and we have presidents in presidential system. You have judiciary. About judiciary, there could be three ways how the judges are selected. So there's a collegium system that we have in India. There could be competitive exams, and there are elections. So judiciary is not answerable to people and not constituted by elected representatives. But there is a debate where it should be also made accountable to people. And you also talked about the judiciary is the guarantor of safeguard of the constitution and the standards of proprietary. Um, and constitution is not a must. You said few countries like UK do not have a constitution, the regular sense. And you said that United States has a specificity where the president is elected by an electoral college constituted by states and not by popular vote alone. And you take the example of Trump, where you said that Trump had lost the popular vote and he became president, even though most voters did not vote him. Yeah, so I think this is all I wanted to say. First of all, yeah, do you agree with this representation that I made from your book? And if you have any comments on this.
Yes, roughly, yes. We do have three different branches in any government. I mean, whether it's a democracy or not, it's at least definitely in a democracy. You have a legislature, you have an executive, and you have a judiciary. So that's fine. I didn't actually treat the media as a separate requirement for democracy because I had made my own list of what I thought were the requirements of democracy, which are not, the list is not exactly in line with what the books say, but this is what I have worked out as a revised kind of theory of democracy. But by and large, yes, this is fair enough. I mean, this you got it. You
Okay,
got the
thank you.
sense.
Thanks. And since we're at it, I would also like to present one more graph where you did rankings about India, Indian democracy. So this is what I meant from your book. You had listed those, and again, I will invite you to confirm it. So we have the criterias. You have given a score out of 10, and I have highlighted some comments there. Um, so first is about free and fair elections. You have given 4 out of 10, and there you have listed that there are EVM manipulations, exclusion of voters from electoral lists. There's a hounding of opposition parties through government machinery. You have second canvassing of minority views, to what extent that is allowed. So on that account is 4 out of 10 because there are missing consultative and inclusive procedures both inside and outside parliament. About judiciary, you have given 5 out of 10 because occasionally protection of constitutional rights and freedoms. I might invite you to focus on this because I'm not sure how far we can um, keep this score because the standard is decreasing day by day about judiciary in India, and that's very critical. Fourth, responsiveness of government to the concerns of voters. That's 4 out of 10 because of dilution of RTI and takeover of media. Fifth, democratic egalitarianism. That you have given 6 because protests for human rights and high voter turnout, these are clear indicators. So I agree. And post-election peaceful transfer of power. I think this issue is important because in the context of India, not many people talk about it. We take it for granted. Although now there are serious uh, reservations about how BJP really tries to turn every election output in their favor. So that's 7 out of 10. Moderate recourse to president's rule. Yeah, that's for sure. We have not seen as many presidential rules since 2014 as perhaps in the past, and were expected in a way. So on an average, it comes out to be 5 out of 10. Yeah. So do you agree with this representation?
Yes, yes. I think you've summarized it very well, actually. And I had, as you can see on the left-hand side, these 6 points are basically what I consider to be the essentials of democracy. So it's against those 6 points that I have given a very This is a very impressionistic marking. There are a number of agencies, international agencies of the very good credentials who actually quantify their markings, and then they give markings to India. And we have been going very quickly down the ranking over the last several years. I mean, the last few years, at least last 10 years, definitely India has lost its position as a democratic country in international rankings. That's for sure. So this is very impressionistic. And this, by the way, was what I wrote at the time the book went to the press. Some things have even, this is a very fluid atmosphere. Things keep changing all the time. So there is a back and forth. Since we'll be talking about judiciary, I shan't talk about our little maybe debate about the mark that I've given to the judiciary. But democratic egalitarianism, I'm really happy, Anubandh, that you believe the same thing. That you have come to the same conclusion that I have, and now we have more evidence because right now what is happening is the look at the protest for protecting the Aravallis. It actually has seems to have succeeded. The last I saw, the government has agreed to well not to allow mining in the Aravallis. Let's see to what extent they keep their promise. But it's good that people are vigilant and they are able to actually get on the ground and get some results. So that's the reason why I have faith in the Indian people to turn the the narrative around by resorting to protests when it's necessary.
Yeah, and I must highlight that in the book you have also noted that you are a natural optimist, and I agree with that also because India and Indians can throw us surprises, incredible surprises. The way the farmers' protest has in the past given us to believe. There's the anti-CA protests as well, and these are huge public uh, expressions of protest, and they're really laudable. What I also liked in this exercise that you did not really confine yourself to commenting existing rankings by agencies, be it Indian or foreign, but you went one step ahead, and with your experiences, your reflections, you gave your own ranking, and that kind of furthers the debate, and I really appreciate that measure. Uh, yeah. So now moving on, um, uh, I have now this topic where you came up with a very important aspect where you said that not all votes have the same value, and that's really a tagline for me, important. Um, and majority is actually a minority. That's another of your concept. So on these two concepts, I will just read a few highlights and then I invite again your comments. So you said the state-wise seat allocation in parliament is frozen, but intra-state redrawal of constituency boundaries was done in 2008 as it was recommended by Kuldeep Singh Commission. And you were lucky to get a hand on this report, and it really reveals something very striking to you in that, which says that you were struck by the fact that Karnataka had the largest number of voters per constituency of any state. And this meant that the vote of a Karnataka voter had less value than that of a voter in any other state. And that's very revealing. Then later, when you contested the election in Shanti Nagar, you also realized that there were 2 lakh voters in Shanti Nagar, while there were 4 lakh in Kiarpuram, the adjacent constituency. So this kind of halve the value in terms of effect, and that people in general do not think about their votes in these terms, and that's important. Again, the NGO Janagraha that you cite, and they had done a survey and which said they found that only 55% of the names on the list, voter list, were those of genuine voters. And then and then the calculations go ahead. They said that with 55% of genuine voters, a participation rate of let's say 60 to 70%, and the first past the post counting, the MLA, the elected representative, had been selected by hardly 10 to 15% of his constituents. So that's the reality, stark reality. And the question you ask, can it be called then the government of the people, and the rule of the majority? So that's one aspect. And last thing about this is the majority is actually a minority, and how you put it. You said that the majority is actually a minority, and democracy allowed the minority viewpoint of Hindutva to become that of the ruling point. So that really keeps the promise of a democratic effervescence, where the minority can hope to become one day a ruling majority at least. Yeah. So thank you for this reflection, and I now invite you to comment.
Well, actually, if you don't mind, let me just just a bit back, and I'll.
Sure.
But what I was realizing as I wrote the book, and this came out as I was writing the book, was that when the democracy is defined, when you work out the definition, it really comes down to the rule of the majority. The discovery was to find that the tools that we have, and I'm talking purely as a technician of democracy, that not the concept, that if I have the right tools to capture the choices of people when they elect a representative, am I actually delivering a legislature or even an executive? But in the parliamentary system, the executive is actually selected by the legislature. So, am I delivering a government at the end of the day, which represents the majority? And what I discovered to my horror is that we don't have the tools in any democracy. Now, this might be controversial, but I think we all need to think about it. We don't have the tools in any democracy to ensure that when the people vote, or so-called, when we go through the voting process, we end up with a legislature and an executive which actually has the sanction or the support of the majority. What we actually end up with is a government which against which the majority has voted. That is quite a that was a discovery. That doesn't mean that I believe that democracy, we should not try out democracy, because I think that democracy is probably one of the most hopeful concepts that human beings have invented, and they're still not there. They're very far from achieving the government of the people that we are all trying to do when we elect our representatives, because we are not getting to the majority. So my definition would be that a legislature is not a place where a majority sits in runs the government. It's a place where there is actually a mosaic of minorities. That's how I see it. So what I have done is explained the four or five, the six reasons. I have put them in six reasons, which actually prove that we do not achieve what we are trying to do. And of course, the first one is basically that our voters lists are in total shambles. And there's a huge gap between the people who should be on the voters list in a particular area and the actual voters list as we see it. Of course, the only way to find out the extent of the disparity is basically to study every constituency, the voters list of every constituency. You cannot substitute, you cannot do sample surveys. That doesn't really prove anything. It may be totally different from one constituency to the next. And of course, I've given you the Janagraha survey, which, by the way, was not actually given publicity. And there was a tendency to say, no, don't talk about it. Okay, that was one. Now, the second point which you made is which you have cited about the value of every vote. This depends on your adjusting on a live basis the demographic movements across constituencies to the area. And that is impossible in any democracy. I mean, whatever you do, you can't do it on a live basis. Now, in a place like India, it gets very, very difficult, because the Kuldeep Singh Commission report was based on the 2010 census data. We have not had a census in 2020, and we are still 15 years down the line, and we are ending up with a situation where we are so far behind the reality on the ground. The first problem. The second problem is going to be that when we draw we are going to have a major confrontation between the states who are going to lose influence in the parliament, because their populations have been controlled, as against those which have done, let's say, a slightly less effective way of controlling their populations. So there was a compromise. It's a political compromise, but it's not democratic. It's a political compromise which has resulted in basically staying the number of seats given to a state, holding it down to a much earlier census date, not to the, and that this will come up now for a renegotiation next year. And states like Tamil Nadu are naturally raising the question, we are going to lose the number of seats or at least reduce our influence in parliament. So that part is kept under control. But what actually, why the Karnataka result which you cited has come about was because keeping the number of MPs static without changing it, they still had to allot the population among the various parliamentary seats of Karnataka. And that, of course, they did change the boundaries of some of the parliamentary seats. But obviously, it still ended up with a result which was quite different. And this is based on very old data, old census data. So the whole situation is completely, confused. It's completely mangled. And I was thinking that any student of politics could do a great job. You know, what you could do is take your vote and simply calculate which constituency will give you the maximum effect of your vote. I'm worth something in Shanti Nagar. I maybe vote. You can do it to keep it in within a state and see what is the value of my vote if I move from constituency A to B to C to D, depending on the what the voters list says about the number of people on the list. So that would be a fascinating exercise just for the
No,
record.
and this is what I really like, that as citizens, it's not just being a passive voter, but an active participant citizen, and that's the invitation that you are also giving to all of us through these reflections, and I really appreciate those. So, moving on, although we do not have much time and we cannot perhaps talk much in detail, but about RTI, the Right to Information Act, which is now highly diluted and all, there was an excellent suggestion that you cited, and I wish to highlight it here, or say it here. It's by the Delhi Chief Minister, former Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, and he said the RTI information, which was already released under RTI, yeah, it should be put on the departmental website. So this will avoid that people ask the same questions again, and
Yeah.
the whole machinery has to work, right? So that's an excellent suggestion, and which I came to know thanks to your book again. Now let's move to caste politics, and this is a important chapter in your book. Again, I will read some issues here. What I really liked in a way, and I did not know much about this, was how women are classified after they are married outside their caste, so intercaste marriages. So you have said that although courts have held that such women will continue in the caste of their birth, and their children have the option of claiming the caste status of either parent, officials invariably insist on classifying them under the caste of the father. And I did not know that there was this protection by the law, and I took it for granted that it was this way, because they assume that the women are automatically inducted into the caste of their husbands. So this is important to give us also the background of the law. Then you cited Dr. Ambedkar, who said that the social, educational, and income inequalities derived from caste would distort the political equality that is essential for a democracy. Perhaps a lot of people know this, but it's again important to highlight it in given time in today's times. And you said later that a viewpoint of a politician is that the caste helps political parties, to maximize their support base with the minimum effort. Now that's also an understanding uh, why it works this way. And you said, yeah, this was very striking, and not many people think it this way. You talked about the impact of caste calculations on the national elections is also distinctly different from its effects on the state politics. And caste is much more critical at state level than at the center. You also highlighted that academic studies about the impact of caste politics on India as a whole are yet to be made. So we see a lot of studies about state caste politics, but not pan-India level, which is yeah, an important factor. And you said caste dominates the absence of a wave base on patriotic fervor, like Pulwama, the sympathy factor, like Rajiv Gandhi after Indira Gandhi was murdered, killed, or just hatred, so like against Muslims, the way it happened in 2002 in Gujarat elections. And then you went back to also to history a bit, and you talked about the Karnataka elections of 1985, and you said you gave the example of Janta Party of Ramakrishna Hegde, which came to power in Karnataka, although they had lost a large number of Lok Sabha seats in December 1984. So this is an example of how voters vote differently, almost within the same time frame for state and central elections. And there's, of course, the example of Aam Aadmi Party winning the Delhi Assembly elections in 2015 and 2020, but not getting much seats in the center. And the last part, and I thank you really for this because it was about Lingayats and Vokkalingas in Karnataka. And I really appreciate this because now I know the historical backgrounds and how things work there, the party-wise calculations. And there's one last point. The notion of caste is antithetical to the ideas of equality and fraternity on which democracy is based. Yeah, so this is what I grouped together as main points from the caste deliberations that you had. So please, if you have any comments to.
Yes, thank you. Anbud, really, I discussed the caste issue, which it does not apply to any country except India, because basically we are the only ones who have a caste. The caste issue, basically, I discussed it not from a social or even the religious point of view, but to the extent to which it affects the political outcome of a democracy. And yes, my conclusion is, and my hypothesis is basically a hypothesis because I've been working only with the knowledge I have of the few states. The caste factor does make a difference to the state level election. But it makes a difference to the state level election only if there is no bigger narrative that can be put out to distort the election process there. So people think their identities are tied up with caste and their economic interests to some extent still continue to be tied to caste, because some of them are, it's like a guild, a medieval guild, that we are all people of a particular occupation. The occupation was also tied to caste to start with. So you have a certain economic interest also tied to your caste. So these are the two things which actually make a difference in an election. Now, I found at least only 3 occasions when a caste factor became important for a national election. Because the first is when Ambedkar himself and the constitution came out and we had reserved constituencies for the Dalits. That was a major political decision which was taken at the time the constitution came out. So that's an important factor. The second was at the time of the Mandal agitation. At that time, there was a feeling, we don't know, it's not been analyzed, I think, in a very precise academic manner, as far as I know, to the extent to which the Mandal factor made a difference in the elections which took place when VP Singh stepped down and we had a next an election, a midterm almost kind of election at that point. That's an interesting study which needs to be made because Mandal really became a factor at the national level. And the third point is now going to come now when you really have the caste census issue coming up um, for a discussion, and that's going to be quite interesting, very controversial, and it will come up for it will become a national issue. Now, the one major reason why the state level results are not affecting the state level caste factors are not really affecting the national caste factor is because we cannot have this the caste dominance of a caste is not same across states. You have a completely different set of castes which are dominant probably in Kerala. You have a different set of castes in Karnataka, and they do not fall easily into the fourfold frame that the British were talking about. We are not in a fourfold frame. So we are in a much more complicated situation where people have captured certain communities have captured the levers of power, and when they have it, of political power, then they don't share it. That's only natural. That's human nature. And the last thing, which I think the Karnataka situation proves perfectly, is that a national party tries to get a foothold in a state by two methods. One is to get beyond the caste factor by creating some kind of national theme, like hatred, this, that. If you can talk about, well, Rajiv Gandhi, about his mother's death, So the caste factor makes absolutely no difference when you have something else, when everybody can be thinking about something else, be concentrated. It may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing, like hatred, just a common feeling of patriotism that we are fighting some other country and that country is threatening us. So that, but if they can't make that narrative, what the National Party does is to make alliances with the state party. And that's exactly what has happened in Karnataka. Now, if I ask anyone from outside Karnataka, they are under the impression that Karnataka has got a lot of people who believe in right wing policies because we have had BJP governments. The truth is, the hardcore right wing ideology is still quite marginal in Karnataka. It's only along the coastal area that you have a lot of people who, from the beginning, have always believed in Hindutva, and in the state of in the small district of Kurk, Kodava, the Kodava community, they have it there. That's it. And now, to some extent, it's creeping in into Bangalore, which is becoming a very urbanized place, and you have a lot of people from outside Karnataka coming and living in Bangalore. So Bangalore is not really a Kannadiga city in that sense. It's a lot of people from outside who bring in their prejudices, but that's not really Karnataka. Now, why the BJP has been able to come to power in Karnataka is because they made a caste alliance with one aggrieved community which was uh, enjoying the fruits of power for a very long time and were very jealous about that. That was the Lingayats. The Lingayats were the ones who, from the beginning of, if you look at Karnataka political history after independence, the chief minister after chief minister after chief minister, they were from the Lingayats. And the Lingayats felt that they had the right to control what happened politically and all the fruits of power, which they had. Now that was marginalized totally, and this happened almost immediately after I had come to Karnataka, and then I saw how Devarajars did it. What he did was he collected all the other communities who were not part of the dominant group, formed an alliance, and that alliance could continue in power only by practically doing a bahishkara, a kind of, I will not have the Lingayats with us, because the Lingayats were very jealous of their power and they would not share it. So they were actually in the doghouse, and they that look found a sponsor in the BJP, and BJP saw a very good opportunity. The alliance was formed, and the BJP by itself, with its fundamentalist ideas, cannot come to power in Karnataka. It can only come using the caste factor, and the Lingayats, believe me, are not fundamentalist.
Mm.
That is the truth, actually. So we have a very interesting situation of the National Party getting to power through the linkage with the caste. And I'm sure that in different states, it's the narratives will be very much will be very special to that state. At the time of an election in a state, like the Gujarat election is coming now, just if you listen to some of the commentators who are intelligent commentators of that state, political commentators, they will discuss the caste factor perfectly. And the rest of us will be watching and understanding it. So that's why what I meant by saying that every state has its, or most of the states. Now, if you would like me to make just one mention of the Aam Aadmi Party here, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
What I noticed about the Aam Aadmi Party was it was trying to get government going without using or without making any alliances with any caste group. He did that in Delhi. But what amazed me most was what happened in Punjab. Because in Punjab, the Shiromani Akali Dal
Mhm.
obviously had tremendous support. And I don't know, still don't understand how the AAP narrative is working in Punjab. Now, they are trying perhaps to find some way which transcends or just doesn't use the caste narrative. Let's say, I'm not saying something is lower or upper or anything. It's just doesn't use the caste narrative. And in my own experience going around Bangalore campaigning, young people may be open to the to something which forces them to look at other issues beyond the caste narrative. And I'm not in favor or against. I mean, I don't have a viewpoint. I'm just saying that this is a trend, which
Yeah.
is also there in the market. It's out there. It's
Right.
happening in the political scene.
On Punjab, I think right from 2024 Lok Sabha election results, where AAP won 5 seats in Punjab. Even before the landslide victory of 2015 and 20.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
in a way, that's a proof that Punjab, people from Punjab are given to adventurous
Yeah.
strides,
Yes.
right?
Yes. You're
Sets them
right.
apart. Right. Thank you.